Hello, good morning, everyone. Or should I say good afternoon, everybody? My name again, this is Hong Ya Wu Isaac, and today I will be, doing another one of my video on my experience in community interpreting in Australia. So of course, this is Melbourne, Australia, and if you happen to live in Melbourne, you happen to know someone or you yourself require um, a interpreting or translating service, you're more than welcome to contact me or go on any online resources, seek for a credible translating and interpreting agency for your help. But today, I will be talking about vicarious trauma in community interpreting settings. Look, the reason I'm talking about this today is basically as my reflection towards this mood of this low mood, this sense of uncertainty, this sense of worriness that is lingering around in Melbourne and in various job settings in Australia as an interpreters and as of course other professionals as well, especially in terms of medical and health. So today the topic that I'm going to focus on is vicarious trauma. So now, before I continue, I would like to read you something. Okay, this is from Relationship Australia. So this is not my own definition of vicarious trauma, but I will read it out from you. Okay, vicarious trauma is the cumulative impact of prolonged and repeated exposure to the stories and experience of pain, trauma, and stress endured by others. So this is a quick definition of vicarious trauma. So it's a cumulative, so it adds on a cumulative impact of a prolonged, which means a constant exposure over a period of time, prolonged and repeated exposure to such an experience. So it's not just once or twice, but it's a prolonged and repeated exposure to the stress, to the experience of pain, trauma, and other unpleasant experience such as stress, violence, and other adversary incidents to someone else. And these sort of experience due to this prolonged exposure to someone else's experience, it eventually gets in fact into yourself. So the reason for these unpleasant experiences could be change of life, getting into an adversarial environment such as violence or war or conflict, or it could be other type of traumas, other type of family impact, or as I mentioned before, victims of violence, as well as psychological trauma. And you can, a very simple term is if you experience a terrorist attack, I will say I'll share about that later, myself to be included. You might have this impact on you, consciously or unconsciously, that may affect your well-being. Okay, so this is vicarious trauma by its definition. So now today, put that definition aside. Let's get less technical. I would just like to talk about how is this relevant in interpreting and translating context. So vicarious trauma, right? If of course you have to, it's first of all, it's not your own experience, it's someone else's experience. And as an interpreter or translator, we experience this trauma, this violence, this unpleasant experience through interpreting, through listening to the story, sometimes really detailed account of stories of our clients, process it in our mind, visualize it in our head, and try to interpret into English. So this is how we interpreters may experience vicarious trauma. So to be straight, this is how it is, because we should just completely chew and swallow in what our clients tells us. We have to understand the whole thing before we can successfully interpret what is being said. So this is how we may be impacted, because no matter what is said, what is replied, what is being told by your client, it has to go through you. And to convey the message to whoever the professional is, in a for example, counseling or victim of crime scenario, we need to fully understand what is being said. And throughout this process, we may experience vicarious trauma, because by listening and processing and thinking about all these dramatic and sometimes hurtful violence events, it may actually impact our own mental well-being, psychological well-being. So this is how it might happen. Now, enough of the definition. Now let me give you an example. I often interpret for seeker of protection, asylum seekers, and police. And one of the most common, I would say, job or assignments for myself is police station. Police station often it require interpreter either via the phone or require a on-site interpreter for victims of crime. Mostly victims of robberies, family violence, and sometimes child abuse. I've been through all those. I remember it was only 2 or 3 months when I first picked up this career as a community interpreter that I had to interpret for a victim of burglaries. So a lady who is in her late 60s has to go through a punch on her face, being dragged over the floor, being dragged upstairs on the stairs, and tied up in a knot, and also was put into confinement for about, I would say, according to what she said, was almost 20 minutes. Meanwhile, 3 strong adult men was searching the house and taking all her belongings away. What's worse, after about that 20 minutes, the lady actually managed to untie the knot, went out of the bedroom, was going to go out for help. But unfortunately, the moment she walked out of her garage door seeking for help, actually the 3 criminals, they were still there. They were just out of the door. They were still lingering around near the foyer, and they actually got back to her, smashed her on the face again, dragged her upstairs into the same room, into the toilet, tied her arms together and legs together, and she's been basically just there up until long time later, a few hours later, when I remember was one of her family who came and visit her and find out that the garage door was open. The house is basically all searched and messed up, and found her in the bedroom. To be honest, in fact, was in the ensuite toilet of the bedroom, and she was all tied up. Okay, so you can imagine this is not a pleasant experience, as I would say here, according to the definition by Relationship Australia. This is an experience of adversity. Okay, this is of course is a traumatic experience. This is an experience of violence. So all this actually of course, is changed, because according to what she said later, I thought St. Albans was a safe area, and my daughter think buying in St. Albans, a house in St. Albans, was a good investment. But unfortunately, that incident basically ruins the image of St. Albans, the suburb, which the crime occurs, and she will be constantly feeling unsafe. So by us interpreters, going through the same process of telling the story, understanding what's going on, and repeating them in English. So according to the most up-to-date studies, we actually had to go through the same process of, sometimes almost a we try to substitute ourselves into the mindset of the victims, and we ended up sometimes go through all these traumatic events in ourselves. And this is where things begin to happen. A lot of, or I wouldn't say a lot, but quite a few numbers of colleagues who went through a lot of violence, crime investigation, police interview, or even court cases, they have, they reported that they don't feel well. They began to feel sad. The experience of others actually impacted them, because as a human being, to any degrees, we have empathy and sympathy towards others. And as an interpreter, we need to have some sort of empathy to what our clients were feeling, because we have to understand the message, and we're not robots. And a robotic experience or expressions or interpretation of words may not be useful or entirely accurate, especially in a court setting, because as you may imagine, in the court, maybe the prosecutor may be saying that, okay, how do you feel when this man was tying you up? How do you feel when he was taking your stuff away? How do you feel? Do you feel threatened? Do you feel hurt? Were you afraid of being killed by this person? Were you in fear of your life? These are very personal and very strong feelings that may impact our clients. And by interpreting what is being said by the client, we as an interpreter, we have to first understand all the lexicons and words, understand the logic of the story, and eventually we need to go through this in our head and trying to express the same sort of emotional, or I would say the intent, the meaning that went beyond verbal words and lexicons, that can truly convey the stories of what the victims of crime were saying. So by going through all this process, right, by we trying to understand what the client is saying, by we trying to substitute ourselves into what the client was experiencing, by we imagining what actually went wrong, we were picturing how the criminal was actually, doing, or what he's doing, conducting the crime. What exactly did he step onto our clients? Did he just slap on her face? Was her even rape? Was the child being raped by certain men? And these somehow may affect us psychologically. So and through this experience, and we might feel insecure, we begin to feel sad. Through our empathy, we begin to feel that, okay, we try to, when we keep on picturing this kind of atrocity in our mind, it's inevitably, it will leave a mark in our head. So unfortunately, this is where vicarious trauma began, because we were, as I said, we were exposed to the stories and experience of pain, trauma, and stress of others. And when we are doing this all the time, maybe in a repeated basis, sorry, I'll just have to get rid of that so you can see me. When we see that, when we go through this quite often, then it may lead to vicarious trauma. We may be exposed to stories of crime, stories of injury, story of death, daily, on a daily basis. In fact, I remember last week, I think I mentioned on my video that I was, interpreting for an elderly lady who was complaining about her experience being locked down in the building in Flemington, where a lot of the residents were tested positive for COVID-19. So when she was talking about her loneliness, her need for help, her need for supply, those things may, okay, although it didn't have that much impact on me, but for some of my colleagues, they may feel that this sense of, imagining it was my mom, my grandmother was confined in this one-bedroom apartment that she couldn't get out, she couldn't get her food, she couldn't get her supply, she couldn't meet all the family and stuff. And when you try to interpret, you got to understand her feeling to correctly convey her message. And when that happened, okay, you can imagine sometimes it may have an unpleasant impact on the well-being of interpreters and translators. And when we interpret what was said, we actually, in our head, went through the whole picture, went through the whole experience once within. So sometimes it may leave a mark there that we might not forget. For example, the first time when I was interpreting for palliative care, I didn't know it was a palliative care clinic. I was told to go to St. Vincent Hospital in Kew, and it didn't say anything. So I went there, and the doctor was just tell me on the spot, this person is in the last stage of her pancreas cancer, and I think we expect that she will only last for the next week or 3 or 4 days or so, and we are now trying to just try to comfort her, okay, try to provide her with pain relief. We are going to transfer this patient from active treatment into palliative care service. And when I went into the ward, when I see the lady there, I think she was just I don't know how to describe it. I think she's at least like 80, 70 years old, and she's about very small. I think the cancer has tortured her so bad that her whole body shrinks into someone who is like maybe 140 or 150 centimeters, and all her bones are really, really just like a piece of bamboo, and all the skin's wrinkles, and she can hardly talk, she can hardly open her eyes, and that immediately reminds me of my late grandmother, my mother's mother, who was also a she was possible. She was actually diagnosed with lung cancer, and I think lung and stomach cancer. Okay, when she had these cancers, she was equally weak. I can hear the same sort of voice when I was interpreting for the patient. The patient was saying how she was feeling painful everywhere. She felt very tired. She doesn't have any appetite, and she was feeling really lonely. And I remember back almost 10 years before that very incident, that my own grandmother told me the exact same thing over the phone. Okay, as a professional, we shouldn't be crying on the spot. We shouldn't be, start shaking and then unable to interpret what was said. Of course, if that really happens, families and hospital, they will understand, they will provide help. But that very moment is the first time where I truly experienced what it means by vicarious trauma, the reminding of my own experience that that may be impacting my ability to work. And there are some colleagues who maybe they were born in the Middle East, North Africa. They've been through a lot of violence. There was constant warfare in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya. When they came over here, they tried to help the community by becoming an interpreter, and they were helping their own fellow, Liberians or Libyan. They helping their own Iraqi community, and then they had the same sort of experience. They were all refugees. They were all going through the wars, and they lost loved ones in the conflicts. And when that happens, right, the commonality of this shared war-torn experience then creeps into the minds of these Arabic interpreters, and that may happen. And how are we going to resolve this? This is what I'm going to talk about. So, first of all, we need to understand that vicarious trauma is a fact. It has an impact. Do not ignore it. Do not think that we are like robots, as a lot of people say, we are robotic. Okay, we are interpreters. All we do is we act as a mouthpiece. We hear what people say. We interpret what we heard, and that's about it. No, you have to understand that it's okay to feel the feelings of your clients. You don't have to, or I would say you shouldn't let that feeling impact your ability to work. However, it's okay. You can realize and you can recognize the fact that this thing actually happens. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If you feel bad or you feel angry, you feel sad after certain assignment, First of all, you realize that you are a human being as well. It's okay to feel this way. So don't be too hard on yourself, okay? Secondly, once you know this thing's okay, when it's happening to you, you have to monitor it. Okay, this is what I was taught. I think it was was back in 2016, I think, when I attended a seminar in Monash University, and it was just about domestic violence, okay? But we did touch on other topic as well. But we were told that we need to monitor ourselves. Think about it. If you don't feel well, you feel a bit, crook. And then if you sit down in your room and you feel that it's nothing to do with that fever, nothing to do with that lower back pain of yours, it's probably come from your work. You begin to feel that dryness in your mouth. You begin to have flashback of what's going on and what you heard, or you begin to imagine in your dreams about what's going on, what the client told you. That means you are somewhat to some degree impacted by vicarious trauma. So then we need to look for strategies. We need to learn how to get out of it. And a common strategy is always get someone that you trust to speak to. It could be your family. It could be your fellow colleagues from the same agency. It could be your friends and colleagues who you talk to all the time. You can share it on, well, of course, given that you get rid of all the names and places and times that may leak out the identity of your client, you can share them on your group chat or your community medias. You talk to your fellow colleagues about what happened, and they sometimes went through a lot of dramatical and serious crime where they can always help you out. They will always get someone to talk to. The mere fact that you had someone to talk to really helped you. So by talking to yourself, by reflecting to yourself, by talking to others, you keep your state of mind under constant monitoring. So you know that if or should there be any unpleasant impact from interpreting assignment, then you know this thing is happening to you. And once this happens, then by having this awareness, by talking to your colleagues who are experienced, you can then go look for backup, look for professional help. There are a lot of, psychologists, or they are consultants. They are other, clinical services that you can go to, often free of charge. Or if you can sign up to be their members, or you can actually look for speak to your agency where they can actually refer you to some services if you've been through this vicarious trauma. If you think that something that if you just went through a long trial in the county court for a month talking about the same murder case, when guts were being pulled out, blood was being spilled, and then the victim was screaming, or the witness was saying the victim was rushed through by the car and was run over by the car, and blood was splashing everywhere. You've been interpreting all this for a whole month or so. Then you should seek help. As an interpreter, a community interpreter, it's okay to feel bad, to feel sad, to feel uneasy and uncomfortable when we interpret them. We may have to do it impartially. We shouldn't put our feeling into how we interpret it. However, outside of this assignment, we are entitled to have a feeling. And once we do have the feeling, like other feeling acquired from other settings, we are able to, and we should always look for help, look for consultancy, look for psychiatric service, look for friends, colleagues who are experienced, who are open to you, who are willing to listen, to talk to. And this is how you can become better. And also you need to, besides seeking help, you have to develop a routine. You have to develop a practice of reflecting yourself. Learn breathing strategies. If things are getting too intense, it's okay to just pause and exit from this whole thing. You can always breathe, take a deep breath. You can always request for coming back later. If to an extent where you're expecting you are experiencing something that is way out of your expectation, it's okay for an interpreter to require exit from this assignment. Of course, it might cause a bit of, inconvenience to your agency, to your client. However, it's okay. It's better for you to cause this little bit of extra inconvenience than you not able to perform your duty. You're not able to comprehend the meaning of your clients and not able to interpret out the most appropriate message to your clients. But the most appropriate way, most appropriate way that you put your message, which is a true reflection of what your client's trying to say. So these exit strategies, this counseling strategy, this talk to friend kind of strategy, please always keep in mind. Given that you try to keep the names anonymous, you try to keep the dates, the time, or the details away. Don't tell them what happened don't tell your friends or counselor about, a particular crime. You can talk about what happened, just as what happened. Just like imagine you saw all those on the TV screen. Okay, make sure when you try to look for help, try to share a story, try to make sure you get rid of all the, privacy related, or try to get rid of all those very sensitive information where victims or even the perpetrator of the crime could be identified, which may cause some unnecessary trouble. So all in all, I would like to reiterate that it's okay to feel the feelings of the victims of crime. It's okay to, when you comprehend the feelings of your clients, it's okay for you to feel sad, stressed, or feel anxious, or even angry sometimes. But if you keep an open mind to it, you accept that these things happen, you're able to look for help when necessary, when you can speak to your agency, your colleagues, or even seek professional help. This could be, could be simply avoided. And my very last word to conclude this video is that as a Christian, I would always say that you should always understand, no matter what happened, okay, God still loves you. So for myself, sometimes I might feel angry about some injustice. I feel sad about someone's experience. I pray to God. Okay, if you do believe in God, do remember Jesus Christ is there. He's a loving God. He suffered, just very visually on the cross. And as a Christian, we can always pray. He understands how you feel. So you can always pray about it, read the Bible about it, seek comfort from stories of Jesus or whichever chapters or verses of the Bible that comforts you. I personally goes back to Psalm a lot, Psalm 23. So yeah, so this kind of extra spiritual help will definitely help you out as well. So now so that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this rather long video about the impacts, the definitions or problem that may associate of a vicarious trauma that is associated with community interpreting, and my little suggestions on what to do if you do experience this kind of problem. So you can more than welcome to leave a comment. Tell me about what you would like to know about community interpreting in Australia, and I can make a video out of it. I hope you enjoy it. You're more than welcome to click the like button and share this video and take it as your reference if you ever want to go into this fascinating industry of being a community interpreter and translator. Take care of yourself. Have a great day.